All right, chapter 7. Um, we meet Beorn, who's one of my favorite characters. This massive black-haired man who can also turn into a bear, lives with a bunch of animals who he speaks to. We learn a little bit more about his history, or at least his history is hinted at, and we also see how Gandalf kind of deals with curmudgeonly people who maybe would have sent them off. Um, so he tells the dwarves about Beorn, warns them to be very polite. Don't mention furriers, Bilbo. Don't talk about people killing animals. Um, and then he instructs them to come two by two, essentially, instead of all coming up at once. They come in low groups, and if they'd come all at once, Beorn probably would have just shooed them away. But as Gandalf is telling Beorn the story of their adventure, the interruptions actually end up being a good thing. Mr. Baggins saw then how clever Gandalf had been. The interruptions had really made Beorn more interested in the story, and the story had kept him from sending the dwarves off at once like suspicious beggars. So I like this idea of the power of story. You may remember in the first chapter, one of the first things that Bilbo remembers about Gandalf is that he's a storyteller. Um, and I love that the story itself, with a little bit of the interruption making them more interested, is what helps convince Baylor to let them stay, at least for the first night. He still goes off and makes sure that their story is true. Um, but the story itself was good enough for the for not sending them off. A very good tale, said he. The best I have heard for a long while. If all beggars could tell such a good one, they might find me kinder. You may be making it all up, of course, but you deserve a supper for the story all the same. Let's have something to eat. So he feeds them and lets them stay the night because of the story. Want to talk about reputation again? Talked about Bilbo's reputation in the last chapter. Now I want to talk about Thorin's reputation. So another reason why Beorn is a little bit more kindly towards him, he doesn't like dwarves. You know, they're kind of an antithesis to Beorn's what he prioritizes in life. Beorn is another one who likes nature. He likes he's a vegetarian, doesn't eat meat, he doesn't kill animals. Dwarves are not like that, right? But because Thorin has this reputation as being a great goblin killer, having fought in the Great Goblin Wars, being Thorin Oakenshield, his reputation helps with Beorn. You may remember in the last, or not the last chapter, but in Overhill and Underhill and Overhills, um, you may recall in the last chapter, Overhills and Underhills, Thorin's reputation was actually a bad thing for the goblins for obvious reasons. It did not help them in that case, but it's helping them with Beorn. So, you know, some people will tell you to not care about whether people think about you, which there is definitely value in that. But, you know, good things can happen if you have a good reputation. Bad things can happen if you have a bad reputation. So keep that in mind as you live your lives. Um, so they sit down to dinner. We see all these wonderful animals serving them, which is pretty cool. Beorn kind of goes off by himself. Gandalf goes off by himself. The dwarves start to sing another song. This is the second song that we've gotten from the dwarves. Because it's not super long, I'm going to read it all, and then I want to talk about what symbolism we see in this song, specifically when it comes to the wind. So as I'm reading it, think about what you think the wind actually is, because I don't think it's literally the wind. You know, why would you, as a dwarf who doesn't maybe care so much about nature and some of these natural elements, why would you sing a song about wind if it wasn't representing something else? The wind was on the withered heath, but in the forest stirred no leaf. Their shadows lay by night and day, and dark things silent crept beneath. The wind came down from mountains cold, and like a tide it roared and rolled. The branches groaned, the forest moaned, and leaves were laid upon the mold. The wind went on from west to east, all movement in the forest ceased, but shrill and harsh across the marsh, its whistling voices were released. The grasses hissed, their tassels bent, the reeds were rattling on its wind, or a shaken pool under heaven's cool, where racing clouds were torn and rent. It passed the lonely mountain bare, and swept above the dragon's lair. There black and dark lay boulders stark, and flying smoke was in the air. It left the world and took its flight over the wide seas of the night. And I'll finish there. I won't read the whole song. So what is the wind? Some of the hints that I'm seeing is that the wind went from west to east. You may recall that is the same direction that the dwarves are going. And I think it pretty well follows their journey. Over mountains, through the woods, to the lonely mountain at the very end. So I think the wind is Thorin's company. So I think they're singing about themselves, which could be a little bit dark. Especially the last bit. It left the world and took its flight over the wide seas of the night. So are they singing about the end of the company, the death of the company, leaving the world? Do they recognize that their mission is difficult? That's really not likely to be successful. I mean, they're going up against a dragon who destroyed an entire dwarven kingdom and a mannish city. So do 13 dwarves and Hobbit really have a chance? Do they know that they're going to die? Do they think that they're going to die? Maybe. And what other symbolism is there in the song? I think there's definitely more of it. Stuff that maybe I'm not even seeing. But think about that. Think about why the dwarves would sing a song like this, because I think that could get really interesting. Again, don't sleep on the songs. Read the songs. They're very interesting. You can get really deep into them. Another thing I want to talk about is they are in the wild now. They're not in civilization at all. They've left the gentle rolling hills behind, right? They're in a place where anything can happen, really. So Beorn, after he heard their story, he went and made sure that it was true. You may recall he did some pretty dark things to make sure that their story was true. But he says, "It was a good story, that of yours," said Beorn, "but I like it still better now I am sure it is true. You must forgive my not taking your word. If you lived near the edge of Mirkwood, you would take the word of no one that you did not know as well as your brother, or better." So there's this idea that you can't really trust the people in this area, even if they seem like they're good. And the dwarves, for the most part, the dwarvish race are good people. There are some bad dwarves, but Beorn is probably right to be a little bit distrustful and to trust but verify, right? Even with Thorin's reputation, Gandalf's reputation as a wizard, there's a lot of things to make sure of. And there's this mention of Mirkwood, which is this dark, corrupted place. It used to be this really bright, happy greenwood. Now it's Mirkwood. This darkness is there. So it's kind of infected even the lands around Mirkwood, making it so Beorn feels like he can't trust the people around him. He gives them a couple warnings about Mirkwood. Don't get off the path. And when you come up on this stream, don't drink the water, don't touch the water. And there's a little bit more foreshadowing there, because obviously, if a wise person who knows what he's talking about tells the main characters to not do something, what are they going to do? They're going to do the things he warns them against, obviously. And we'll find out in the next chapter what happens when they leave the path, and before that, when they accidentally touch the water of the stream. But that's chapter 7.